Hello and welcome back to Logical Magic Examining Esoterica. Hey guys, today I have what I think is a really important and an interesting topic for us. And Rachel Garrett from the Spiritual Spotlight and from Akashic Angels is here joining me again today to talk about this. She was the person who, when I got the idea for it, I was like, that's the right person to talk about this. She'll get it as well. And it is the concept that what is the root cause of procrastination and avoidance? What's really going on there? Because it's not about laziness. It's not often about depression, although we're told it's about depression. It's usually not. It is usually an emotional regulation issue, meaning that we are avoiding a situation or procrastinating on doing something because a part of us dreads the emotions it will bring up, which may be of inadequacy or maybe of fear or maybe of any other things. And it's not just about what we do in terms of our responsibilities. It can be facing situations that will dig into old emotions or old pain. And so when you start examining why you're avoiding a situation or why you're procrastinating on doing something, that is one of the things to keep in mind. It is an emotional regulation issue. So, Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me on again. I'm actually really super excited to be diving into this topic because I do feel like this is something that I personally have been experiencing probably since the end of December of 2023 until now.
Mm.
And I love the fact that you're kind of bringing up this topic because how you say I've always been sometimes I know I'm really efficient with how I live my life. And
Mm.
sometimes when I'm efficient, that may come across as laziness because it's like I'm done with what I need to do. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
then I'm like, oh wait, am I procrastinating? Am I not doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Oh no. And then the shame and the guilt and everything just starts layering on and on and on. And I know I shared with you personally that I experienced a lot of illness in December, January. I just came off another illness. I'm like, what is going on? And I think it's because I am avoiding regulating my emotions and not allowing trauma and past things to really come up to the surface and allow them to kind of identify it, feel it, because I know that we like to not feel things and then let it go. So I think that's what I've kind of been shifting into the last couple of weeks. And so I'm so happy that you brought this up.
It's that, serendipity thing, the synchronicities where it was like the right time and the right person, the right topic. And what we're talking about when it comes to emotional regulation is that one of the things that Rachel and I have in common is we're both introverts. And people don't know that about us because like we both appear to be extroverted. And so what that does involve is the ability to take the part of you that is like, no, not people, and put that in the basement for the entirety of the time that you're doing the work that you feel is important within this world. But it's very important to acknowledge the like, hey, listen, that need to withdraw is not actually emotionally healthy. It came from a place of trying to guard my overly sensitive feelings because people who are highly sensitive, intuitive, healers, or psychic are going to have big feelings. It's being sensitive, and that it's hard to figure out how to talk yourself through ultra sensitivity with other people and like to put it in a good perspective and in a good balance. And emotional regulation issues. And the first thing that we need to talk about is the idea of gratitude, because before, like, there's always a couple minutes where I'm talking to a guest before we get on. And Rachel and I, like, immediately pretty much like head dive right into the topic and came up with several things that need to be brought up here, which is the pressure to express gratitude almost
Yes,
exactly the moment that you have a negative emotion, and it's
yes.
pressed in the spiritual community. I'm not naming names or casting any shade here,
No,
but what happens is that since gratitude and being part of mindfulness, and it helps you reframe your emotions and look at your life from a different perspective, and therefore can be a very good tool in choosing your emotional direction, which is important in emotional regulation. It can then become the thing that you're beating yourself up with, because it really can be, I'm not being grateful enough, which is a way of, shaming us out of our own emotions. You have to let yourself have the negative emotion, acknowledge why you're having it, whether or not it's related to fatigue. And for me, I was talking about, like, in the mornings here, I live in Southern California, so I'm about to sound like a real whiner. In the mornings when I take out my dog, it can be really cold. It can be like really, like it's in the 40s cold. And I get it. I used to live in areas where in the 40s is like, put on your sunscreen and your bathing suit because it's a heat
It's
wave.
a heat wave.
But here it's bitterly cold compared to what it normally is. And we don't have good insulation and your blood gets thinner. I'm justifying my emotions instead of just allowing myself to have them, which is when I'm uncomfortable, I need to acknowledge why, and I need to be okay with it and to be able to sit with that discomfort. And the immediate hop to gratitude can be a way of shaming yourself for having a natural reaction to, as like, I don't know if you saw how many different ways I apologize for feeling cold, or like, I know it's a heat wave in other areas. That part of me is very like, you're not allowed to be uncomfortable right now because others are more uncomfortable, and that it is relatively beautiful where you are. And these are all things that bring something back into balance. But the goal in emotional regulation is to be like, you're having that feeling, and that feeling's not your enemy. It exists with other things, and you'll feel better when you start looking at the other things, which is what gratitude is. But gratitude is not an off switch for a negative feeling. Rachel, you've got some experience with this. What's your experience with the pressure to reach for gratitude as the solution to the feeling that you should be processing?
Yeah, I think that you brought up really, really valid points. And I think it also goes with the law of attraction. And when you're also trying to manifest something, you've got to be in a space of gratitude. And if you're not in a space of gratitude, then you can't pull this in. And it's this shoulda, coulda, woulda, and this constant battle of, wait, I had an interaction with somebody, or maybe I went outside and it was bitterly cold and I felt uncomfortable.
Mhm.
I'm okay to feel like that, but no, got to be grateful
Yeah.
because, and it is. So I've had a couple of different experiences with being kind of always have to be grateful. And it's like, oh, you're in your ego. You better be grateful. Otherwise you're gonna go down this toxic, this toxic hole, and you're a healer and you should be grateful. Because I think our ego does play a role in our lives. Like as a healer and as a registered nurse, there are certain aspects of my life that I want to achieve success. Is that me going into my ego, or is that me being driven and determined to live a life that I desire? And why should
Right.
I feel shame or uncomfortable for wanting to achieve what I consider my level of success? Like your level of success and my level of success are going to be completely different things. And why should I compare myself to you or feel guilty for wanting to be successful? And I know that kind of deterred off the gratefulness meter, but I have been told you got to be grateful. You better write down 10 things you're grateful for. You better get into this gratitude practice. And I'm like, I am grateful. Every morning when I'm driving to work, I look at the sunrise. I'm like, oh, that is so beautiful. And that for me is going into that energy of gratitude. And I'm grateful for my surroundings.
Mhm.
But I don't want to feel baited into having to do a practice that I'm probably not going to be in the energy of gratitude because I'm pissed off because somebody told me to do this. So
Mhm.
that's really not me being in the correct energy of gratefulness.
Right? It's like just making you the
Oh my
universe
God,
is
I'm
popping
so
all those strings.
grateful.
Grateful, grateful,
Ugh.
grateful. What you were talking about is also with the law of attraction. I've talked about this a lot. There's a flaw in the law of attraction, and that's it. It tells you to think only positive thoughts. You have to deal with your negative emotions in a very balanced way, honoring them, but not dwelling in them for too long without, like, being in the ruminating space. But if you attempt to not acknowledge a negative feeling, it doesn't go away. It's just pressed down. And that's what leads to procrastination, is knowing, even within the spiritual community, even when you're healthy, if you put too much pressure on yourself to always look on the bright side of life, when you are facing something arduous, you will avoid it. You will try to procrastinate against it because the pressure to hold back those negative emotions or the fear that you won't be able to deal with the resulting emotions is part and parcel of why you don't want to do the thing. And so
Right.
it is a double-edged sword. Gratitude, everything that we talk about, everything contains its opposite, guys. You can misuse the concept of gratitude. Gratitude is incredibly important, but it only counts if it's authentic. These things will only work if they are authentic. So let yourself be like, God damn, it's cold out here and birds stamp your feet. And oh my God, please hurry up. I'm so cold. And then, I guess the sky is beautiful blue. You have
Right.
to actually let yourself feel something to release it. And my goodness, am I ever gonna like prepare to go from 0 to 60 in the emotional like peril that we're talking about in the example I'm about to use? Because I am fresh off of one that is, Rachel, you will probably not know this, but I was bawling my eyes out 2 hours ago, absolutely devastated, crying. And it is because late on Thursday night, I got an email from my brother. We did not grow up together. I hope I don't cry right now, but if I do, please forgive me. We did not really grow up
Don't
together.
apologize for how you're feeling.
Thank you. Good reminder. At the age of 6, my mother left my father and took my half brother with her and left me with my father. And they were both hideously abusive people. So it's not like he got the better life and I got the crap one, but he had taken care of me. He is 4 years older than I am. And he was a protector for me, and he was very invested in being a big brother, and he was very proud of me. And he stayed that way, but he was very, very damaged from our childhood. And he is actually a good person who just has unhealed trauma. But it led to some behaviors that I'm not going to go into because that's his stuff. And my stuff was that I had to draw back from him and draw back from him and draw back from him. And I went through a period of 15 years when I did not speak to him. And we do speak again. We talk, we exchange emails, and they're, kind of cursory emails sometimes. So the email that I got on Thursday night, is that my brother has stage 4 kidney cancer and nodules in his lungs, and they're not sure what else, and that he is going into surgery in 2 days. And he, in the emails, apologized to me for taking so long to tell me. And he said, it's actually really hard to tell people that you love that you have advanced cancer. And as like that kind of set in, I had a full day yesterday. I could not let myself feel anything. And in fact, was a little weirded out that I was like, what am I not feeling here? Because I feel very numb. And that's always a warning sign. Be aware of that. Numbness in the face of something jarring is actually a sign of emotional repression. So I go through my day yesterday. I did not have the luxury of breaking down. I had clients. And it was only last night when I finally let myself just text Jacob and tell him about it. And that I almost felt like I didn't have the right to be sad or to grieve. But the reality is my brother has 2 sons under the age of 25. One's about to be married. He has a great wife. He's about to be a grandfather. That it's very, very tragic indeed, because I looked up the survivability of what's going on with him. And I would be foolish not to prepare myself, and he would be foolish not to prepare himself. And he knows that as well, that it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good at this particular point, that there's a less than 15% likelihood that he will survive in any meaningful sense. And I would not let myself feel any grief for that. And I'm sorry it's coming out now, but this is what we're talking about, is that we shame ourselves out of emotions that we don't think we have the right to. Like you're talking about with gratitude, and I'm talking about with like, I ended up just begging the divine, please don't do this morning. He's had a very hard life. And this is what we're talking about. Now you can have an emotion and sit with it and not lose control of it. And that's what's going on with me right now. Is that I have, both my parents were only children, so I have no aunts or uncles or cousins. He is literally my only family other than my son. My mother is still alive, but we are no contact. And for good reasons. The person he grew up with is so toxic, I cannot allow myself to interact with her because she's purposely damaging to people to this day. And I just felt just how unfair it was that this is happening to him now. Because one of the things he described would have been him being in agony, just an absolute agony, because he's very, 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 very tough. And if he went to the ER and ended up in the hospital for 3 days, then he was in absolute agony. So there was that part too. And That's what we're talking about, is that I walked around with a cork in my emotions because I was afraid that if I had them, I would lose full control of them. And I did have them, and I knew I was meeting you at 10. And I was like, I kept telling myself, yeah, get it together, like right now. There's almost no time. And it was fine. It was fine. And I do actually feel better having acknowledged that it's okay that I'm sad that my brother is gravely ill.
I want to, one, I hope that everything is okay with your brother, but acknowledge the reality of the situation in which he's in.
Yeah.
You bring up the point of when a family member is going through something tragic, traumatic. For my own personal experience, my stepmother, who's been my mom since I was very, 15 years old, also has stage 4 cancer.
Oh,
And, it's been a year now, but what you said hits home of not allowing me as a family member looking in the avenue to grieve of this is our matriarch of our family. This is, the glue. This is somebody that I go to. This is, and then just making sure I'm tough and strong and always stoic because me being the registered nurse was the one that coordinated a lot of her care in the beginning. And, because I manage a doctor's office and, I had to be the hands on. So it is interesting when you look around and other people have their lanes to grieve, but then it's like, wait, Rachel, I also need to take space to grieve and to allow these emotions and to really feel into, oh my goodness, what would life be if, what would we do if, and having these tough conversations, especially because we're in the United States and we don't talk about death enough. We don't talk
oh,
about, advanced directives and what are your plans. And I'm sorry, this is hijacked. Here I am apologizing for feelings. But it's like we don't talk about what happens when somebody passes, and to go with this experience, my brother, who his that's she is his biological mother. He committed suicide about 6 years ago.
oh.
So it's like we've had all of these layers of grief and tragedy and trauma. And like you, we also have a small family.
Ah.
And we are like we're tight knit, and I'm grateful for that. We are very tight knit. But just and I'm sorry, I'm stumbling on my words because it's hard to get my thoughts out. But it is this, oh my gosh, like, holy fuck. Sorry, I don't mean to
No
cuss.
worries.
But
Well, I'll just mark it as explicit. Guess what? F-bombs fly. Boom, bomb. There we go.
but it's very like, oh my, but I'm the oldest daughter. So it's like all of these layers of all of these expectations and emotions and feelings. And but you're the healer and you're this and you're the registered nurse and you run the office and you need to do this. I still have these expectations on me, but I still also need to, why have I dug my head in and procrastinated and not looked at things? Because I'm overwhelmed by life circumstances and the things that are around me that I'm like, but be grateful. Like, you
Yeah.
know, it's hard. And I think I finally hit a wall and now I am things that I felt were important. I know that myself as an energetic being, I need to take care of myself first and allow these traumas and allow these moments in my past and also past lives because those carry with us now to
Yes.
come up. What are these feelings that are coming up? Why do I feel like I don't want to answer an email? Why do I feel like I don't want to say yes to this event? Like I need to honor why I don't feel comfortable with this moment. And, for family members that are going through really tough, hard things with your brother, with my stepmom, with anyone, my partner's his aging mom, like it's so the amount of burnout that goes on a family member, people don't acknowledge it. And it's like, oh, you just got to push through. And I'm a registered nurse. One of the things I learned was caregiver stress burnout. And this, I've been a nurse for 20 years. I learned 20 years ago. Nobody ever talks about caregiver stress burnout ever. So that's my tangent for you there. But it's
It's
hard.
not a tangent. It's incredibly related because when we're talking about procrastination, what really causes it, and at the root of it is learning how to regulate our emotions in a productive rather than a destructive way.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is that to fulfill responsibilities that are necessary for our actual survival, or the things that we have taken on willingly, the roles that we inhabit willingly. Like I said yesterday, I did not have the space for that. I had
Right.
a tough client roster, and I made a bunch of jokes about beware the Ides of March within my head and all kinds of things to try and make sure that like I had my persona that is all only a healer, that makes everything about the person that I'm dealing with about them. I'll use examples for myself because people learn through examples, but that it was like that was the role that I have agreed to fulfill, and I find it an honor, and what am I? I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for it. I'm genuinely, genuinely grateful for it. Having said that, if I did not then take the space to acknowledge this is a devastating piece of news that came literally out of nowhere for me.
Yes.
Now, and to not allow myself to, it's not weak to feel. And
It's
that
not.
is the thing that I have had to really, really cope with in my own healing journey, is as somebody who's badly abused in like every possible human way as a kid. And like, I'm a full grown woman. Does it matter still? It goes into the emotional foundation of my response system. And so it
Right.
informs what I struggle with to this day because it's part of my fundamental construction. That's what formative damage is, or the need to heal your inner child. So inner child damage, then I was bullied, then a bunch of other things. And so I learned not to show my feelings because I was berated or actually beaten sometimes for having feelings or making mistakes as a kid. And so I really learned something, which is if you let somebody else see how you're feeling, they will use it against you. And that's my abuse background, my background of having been
Yeah.
abused. In a healthier state, even though it sucked, it wasn't fun. There were a lot of tissues involved. I didn't feel very good, but then the feeling was out there, and I was coexisting with it. And that it is okay, no matter what the history is here, that the fact that I love my brother is without question, even if we can't really be in each other's lives, because like the joke I've always used is like we're, veterans from the same war, and he was in the Pacific and I was in the Eastern Theater, and like that it just kind of went down that way, is that we both had a lot of challenges, and that the same thing happened to him. He had somebody who was very, very important to him literally ripped away from him, and that it was very disorienting emotionally, and he also suffers from emotional regulation issues. And that's how to recognize what's going on. Is numbness is a clue, procrastination is a clue, and also whenever you find yourself beating yourself up with a spiritual or a healing concept to try and talk yourself out of allowing yourself a feeling, that is a red flag. Pay attention to it. It's a
Absolutely.
warning sign of, I'm not actually dealing with this in a productive manner. I'm trying to shame myself out of a feeling.
Yes.
I wouldn't let
Absolutely.
myself cry because it's like I felt like I didn't have the right, because I haven't been in his life a lot as an adult, but there are super, super good reasons for that. And he understands it and I understand it. And for you, with your situation, and I have been aware that like you've really struggled with your health, you're talking about what can happen when like being the warrior, being the leader, being the healer, being the responsible one can really turn around and bite you in the butt, because your
Yep.
immune system will start to collapse on you
It will.
because you're using so much energy to maintain the facade of strength. And it is not weak to have feelings. It is not weak to be afraid. It's normal to be afraid. We all do things that we're afraid of doing over and over and over again. That does not make us cowards. That's actually what bravery is. It's okay to acknowledge your fears and to understand them. Like what's something that you routinely procrastinate on, to dial it back from the dire and the people are dying and we're letting the F-bombs fly, because hey, harsh language sometimes brings point of power. So we're
To
both clearly not people who swear a lot.
no. To be honest, what I routinely procrastinate on is that if I get a phone call, I don't necessarily return it right away. It's usually because somebody wants something from me and maybe I'm not in a space to give it.
Do you have a
So
hard time
I will
saying no to
say
people? Is it that you have a hard time saying no?
it's ultimately I still need to do what they're asking for, because that's my role as somebody who manages a doctor's office. I know
Oh,
this sounds so silly. But sometimes I think that there's too much access to me and I need to set up boundaries. And it doesn't matter if it's my father or if it's my sister and I guess maybe what I'm saying is I'm giving myself permission to draw a line
Mhm.
and I will address it when I need to address it. And maybe I am putting myself in a procrastination state and maybe I'm putting shame on me. But as I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, no, I'm actually setting a boundary that you don't always have access to me and you don't always and I think this is an issue that we have as a society. Not everything is immediate. Not everything is right now.
Yeah, we have a false
And
sense of urgency. We have a false sense of
yes,
urgency a lot.
yes, it's like no, it's okay to pause. It's okay to and I experienced this in my professional life, in my day-to-day life because the amount of entitlement that comes across because your poor planning doesn't constitute my emergency,
Hmm.
like and it's hard to have people understand that and realize it's like no, I'm not being a jerk. It's just that I'll take care of it when I can take care of it. It's we have this amount of responsibility and this little amount of time in a day to take care of it. So it is interesting. I guess that's probably where I procrastinate. And maybe I'm really good about starting like good routines and then I fall off. And then I'm like, I have to go back to myself, like, okay, well, I was feeling better. I was feeling really good about that. I was doing really well, waking up at 5 a.m. every morning, going for a walk. And then I got cold. And then it's like, but Rachel, you were feeling better, so I need to look at why did I just stop doing that? I mean, I honestly was on a good routine. I was walking, I was talking to God as I was walking, and now I'm like, I stopped that a week ago. Why? I need to, now I feel like I'm a lazy slob.
Like one of the things that we're touching on is how much shame
Yes,
plays a role within our emotional regulation issues.
yes,
Whether it's like, like I said, sometimes we put way too much pressure on ourselves to take a sharp turn towards the positive when it's like you've not taken the time to understand the negative yet, which means that it's not resolved, it's hanging on to you. That is the
right.
anchor that you are trying to tow through your journey if you will not acknowledge the negativity and what it's really about. That is what keeps people from the whole law of attraction manifestation thing. It's like
Yeah,
you cannot manifest by only thinking positive thoughts if you're not understanding and dealing and
yeah,
releasing those emotions. What I talked about being a blubbering mess before I got on here is that like at least it's not I'm not sitting on it any longer. It's not going to be the
no,
undercurrent in this. Apparently it's going to be part of the topic, but it's not going to be the undercurrent in this particular interview. But what you're talking about, like when you go back and listen to this, Rachel, if you do, like pay super close attention to how your particular method turns very like sharply towards self-criticism.
it does. I 100% acknowledge that I am my number one worst critic. And I know that, self-talk is detrimental to how I am as a being right now.
Right.
And I think that's why I know that we're recording this in 2024. My theme for this year is health and well-being. And I know and I'm getting excited about it, but it's like, Rachel, you don't have to eat the entire pie in one day. It needs to be a 2%. It needs to be small baby steps.
Right.
And I have to
Slow and
remind
steady.
myself, yes, slow and steady is going to win the race. I don't have to, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So it's like, I need to give myself grace. I need to give myself space to be like, it's okay if I don't do this today. And I know this in my mind. I have to feel it in my soul, is where I need for this emotional regulation to get up from here and go back into my heart. Like that's what I know needs to be reconnected. I'll get there.
And then we do have to go through because I did the exact same thing. The thing I was like, hey, pay particular attention to what you're doing. It's like I already saw what I did, which is that like I did not think I had the right to feel grief for that.
Right.
I was ashamed of the idea that it's like you don't have the right to feel that. You like practically cut that person out of your life. And it was for both of our own good because very codependent and toxic, patterns within that family. It's generational
Mm,
curse, generational trauma type of stuff. What we have to talk about when we're like allowing ourselves to acknowledge that, like, well, it makes sense that you feel that way. It makes
yeah.
sense that you feel that way, that you feel like sometimes like you have to be everybody's rock, but who's your boulder type of thing. It can be a really difficult thing to be the person who, and then you have to like, it's the role I've chosen to inhabit. It's the role I
Right.
have willingly taken on, does not mean that every single step of the journey is filled with joy, because we would not understand joy if we never had despair. It would just be our state of being. This whole, you're always positive, you're always positive, always positive, that would become your neutral state if you did
Mm,
not actually understand that it is different than your regular state of being, or it is something that you are choosing to achieve. And if you achieve it authentically, it works really, really well. But if you try to achieve it by berating yourself, which I've done it and you've done it, and we've both done it within the confines of this particular episode, berating yourself for having an inconvenient emotion.
right.
The thing that I noticed was I was like, I don't have time to deal with this right now. I have responsibilities to fulfill and people are counting on me. And
Mm,
you can still fulfill your responsibilities and then take the time for yourself. You can, every
absolutely.
now and then, even in a spiritual practice that helps us feel connected, like getting up and walking at 5 a.m. in the morning and talking to God and feeling very connected. I do my own stuff that has to do with sometimes hiking up and down mountains and, sitting by streams and rocks and leaning up against trees. And I did that this morning as well, which I got told to in my cards. Like when I have a work day, I look at my cards and it really helps inform the things that I need to focus on. And I will tell you, I was the grumbly foot soldier this morning when I saw the like, hey, go connect with nature, and I don't want to. And like, I had to acknowledge that that's what happens. What happens when you are repressing your emotions is you're more likely to be irritable, you are more likely to be
Mm,
frustrated, you are more likely to be physically unwell at a
yeah.
low and grumbling level, like the cold you can't shake, the headache that's always there, the pain in the stomach that like no amount of food makes it go away. Your body will send you signs when you are repressing your emotions. But what the heck do you do when you have something that it's like, hey, listen, I get why I'm avoiding it, I get why I'm procrastinating it, but I have to do it. What in the world do you do in order to be in the space to accomplish it? First of all, you acknowledge that this particular event is likely to dig into this particular emotion. And so if it's something that is really going to tweak you out, like maybe you really fear going to a doctor's office, but my God, you need your checkup. Well, don't schedule anything else that day. Schedule something
Mm,
relaxing later in the afternoon. Maybe schedule something relaxing in the morning, even though you're unlikely to enjoy it as much. It will set the energy for you. Make sure that you do not overschedule yourself on days that you are going to experience something that you've been procrastinating against, because
yeah.
you will be the worst version of you, because dread is the thing that is driving your train that day. And so instead make it an acknowledgement of, listen, this is gonna suck. Like, there's no way around it. I know what this will do to me. It will tweak out my anxiety, it will tweak out my OCD, it will tweak out my anger, it will tweak out my patience, it will tweak out whatever it is that you've been like trying to avoid. Acknowledging it will suck, but it is for a finite time. And if
Right.
I approach it that way, knowing that it's going to pass, what like the things that get turned into taglines, people don't talk about them in depth, and they should, because it's so dismissive to the this too shall pass. It is true. Everything in life is temporary. Even us. Life itself is
Yeah.
temporary. That said, sometimes when you're approaching something that's going to be 3 hours of nothing but Suckville, you can really, really just be like, but it's not over yet. It's going to be, and it's going to be kind of crappy while it's going on, and that 3 hours will feel like an eternity because it's sucking inside out. And all you really can do is make peace with that. And
Right.
once you do, guess what? The level of, we're just going to keep using the very technical term of suck, the level of suck will not be as pronounced as you thought it was going to be when you've prepared yourself for it. When you know that after it's over, I do this, I do that, I do the other thing. Maybe I talk about my feelings. Maybe I schedule a
Mm,
therapy session. Maybe I do something that will help me. Maybe I'll go get a massage. Maybe I'll go get something to eat. Maybe I'll go to the park. You figure out what you can do to change from that energy to your preferred energy as quickly as possible. But what will not work is going, I will just put on my tunnel vision and my survival mode and pretend the feeling I don't want to have is not there. So
I
what's your
think you bring
advice
up
on
some valid
this?
points. Yeah, so I love how you kind of talking about going to the doctor. And one of the things that is so important is preventative care. And you may not feel comfortable going to the doctor, but it is something you should try to do at least yearly, is go get a preventative, healthy checkup. And then as an aging female and as an aging male, there's things that you need to have done, mammograms, colonoscopies, Cologuards, things that are uncomfortable. But you should have that looked at because like this is
What
off
happened with
topic,
my
but like,
brother to avoid what
right.
happened with my brother?
Right. It's like, and to avoid what happened with my stepmom, she was not getting regular mammograms, and it's like, it's a gentle reminder of body keeps the score. So when we do repress these emotions and when we don't acknowledge traumas and we don't open up to these are things that I'm going to go to, these are going to percolate in dis-ease. They're going to percolate in cancers and rashes and anxiety and irritability. I have right here on my shelf that I'm looking at, I have, emotional body regulation. I have how the body keeps the score, metaphysical anatomy. I know that when I'm going into illnesses such as colds, you mentioned that earlier, because I've been knocked down from my immune system, I have to look at, well, why, Rachel? And I look at it and I have to, okay, well, it's this, this, and this, and this. I'm not speaking my truth. I'm not telling people what I need. I'm not, whatever it is. And I work through it, to strengthen my immune system, to strengthen my physical body, because it's so important that your body is strong, and your body is as healthy as you can have it. So I just feel like we don't acknowledge that your thoughts create your reality, your body keeps the score. When you've gone through, you had a very traumatic childhood. I had a traumatic childhood. And it's like, well, have I acknowledged all those traumas? Have I acknowledged all that energy that's embedded into my cellular tissue? Probably not. And I may need to dig in and do some work with it. And I also need to look at, well, what are these repeating patterns that are coming up? Oh, I'm not enough. I don't want to be seen. Well, why? What's my emotional regulation with that? Well, I turn to procrastination. I don't want to do it and I avoid it. Okay, Rachel, feel the discomfort. And I this is what I do. I get over myself. I'm like, just Rachel, get over yourself. And I'll feel it and I'll do what I need to do and I'll move on. But I have to put myself in that mindset to be like, I'm gonna be uncomfortable and that's okay. I may cry and that's okay. It's okay.
You're pointing out so many things that are so, so important, including the tool of addressing yourself almost in the third person. And
Yeah,
why? Because it's a part of you you're trying not to acknowledge. And so when you acknowledge it with the Rachel, get over yourself, or Alane, for the love of God, let yourself cry. It's not unhealthy to cry. That it helps to acknowledge it with something that you are seeing from a greater perspective, but as like your own like coach, your own best friend, your own mentor. They can call it reparenting. And there are very specific reasons that I do not like the terms inner child healing and reparenting. And it is because it's so reductive to that part of you. It makes it sound like it's the immature child within.
Yes.
And
That
it's
is a
not.
very good point.
It's
Yes.
not. It's your emotional response
Yes.
system is programmed into you by your circumstances and your environment as you are growing up. And that part of you is your shadow self, the thing that stands behind you, the thing that lives in the dark. It is not a child. It is something that has learned lessons that it will always struggle with because they are literally in the roots of your very own physical being. And it needs to be addressed. Like I always liken it more to a rescue dog that's been through it, is that you need to have patience with that part of yourself, but it's not a baby. It's not a child. It is part of your emotional construction as a mature adult that makes emotional regulation a particular challenge for you. And there are only a few things that will truly help, which one is acknowledgement. Acknowledgement with keeping an eye towards like, listen, this can go into the self-pity, into the ego place, into the I, like, why me, why me, why me of it all. way too easily, which is a stage in healing that is very natural for people at a different developmental stage. And we all fear going back to it. After, when you're
We do.
acknowledging your trauma, you have to admit that it's like, it sucked. But you get out of that particular, right? You get out of that particular era of your life, and acknowledging something that comes from the original trauma is not the same thing as going back to the bad place. It is acknowledging. It won't overwhelm you. It will not take over your life if you deal with it in the small increments that it needs to be done as the needs arise. And when we're dealing with something that we're avoiding, not everything can be avoided, nor should it be. Avoidance is a placeholder for healing. If you're still avoiding, it means that there's something that you need to address so that you do the things that you need to. You do the things that will best serve your physical house, your spiritual house, your emotional house.
Right.
It is honestly a difficult thing. And so talking to yourself like you're your best buddy and your best partner is one of the easiest and the best ways to do what is sometimes referred to as reparenting. And I've just gone into why I know I do not like that terminology.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Be your
No.
own. How about being your own life coach? Because
Well,
that's
just,
what it really
yeah.
is. That's
Be
what
your
it
own cheerleader.
exactly. What now? You've had to resolve trauma. I've had to resolve trauma. And I
Yeah.
think we can both acknowledge that resolution means that you have reached a place where you can coexist with it in a productive and a healthy fashion. But it
Yeah.
is not the eradication of you, because
Amen.
the trauma is not the only thing that went into forming you, and you do not want to amputate parts of yourself. When people talk
And
about, go ahead.
I'm sorry. The thing is also like my trauma has also helped me as a healer.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm able to empathize with my clients. I'm able to acknowledge a space inside of them that I see inside of me. So yes, I've had trauma. I've gone through stuff. I've had some real tough times. I'm, I look back at it. It's part of my journey. I'm not going to forget what happened. I'm going to, but I also, and you kind of touch on this a little bit, it's like I don't allow it to trigger me to have this. It's not going to break down my life.
And
Something might
part of
perk up.
avoidance is of being afraid that you'll be triggered into an unregulated and an out of control episode. Yeah.
Like I know that I'm not going to be triggered by certain things. I'll go into the situation wide-eyed. Like I know what I'm going into. Like, okay, I'm prepared. I'm emotionally okay with this. I'm also somebody who has chronic depression, was diagnosed when I was 15 years old. So I know what it's like to be in the well, but I also know what it's like to get out of the well. I don't
Yes.
want to stay in the well. I don't want to stay, that was my southern accent kicking in. I don't want to stay in the well. I know, I know that, but it's okay to feel the way I'm feeling. It may be a chemical response, a chemical imbalance. It may be an emotional imbalance. It may be somebody's tapping into my energy imbalance. I need to go within to figure out what's going on. So that's one of the ways that I will do. And it's just a matter of taking a nice deep breath in and just kind of centering myself. What's going on, Rachel? It doesn't have to be like, I'm not going to, I don't know. I'll go outside and get some fresh air. I need some sun. I need sun. Whenever I'm like, I need sun. And that's a simple tool. I just need sun. I live in New York. I need sun. My vitamin D levels are low. I don't know. But it's
Vitamin D3 and depression, like it is actually very
they're
important.
linked. They're linked. And I make sure to check my vitamin D levels because then my calcium activates and my bones are strong. So yeah, go off
Yes.
on me. But
It's
go ahead.
important. A lot of the tools that we're told about for mindfulness, for like being connection with the earth, for grounding, these are
So
also
important.
things that they have scientific validity in actually regulating, in being your team, on your team for your emotional
Yes.
regulation issues. And since resolution of trauma is not about eradication of a past version of yourself. It always like
No.
ticks me off when I hear tarot card readers or anybody else talk about you're releasing a past version of yourself. Dude, that person got you to where
You're
you are.
integrating a past version of yourself. You're pulling yourself back in to balance yourself. That is what I'm doing. I am not incomplete. I am whole. I'm pulling this back of what happened and now it's healed. I want balance and integration.
I can prove to myself that I can retain the parts of me from the past that helped build the person who was enduring and resilient enough to keep going towards healing until I had resolved that trauma. But every now
Yes.
and then, there will be things that will remind me of what is a core wound. And it doesn't make me an
Mm,
infant, and it doesn't make me a little kid, and it doesn't make me immature. It means that there is a
yes.
fundamental injury to my emotional well-being that I will, it will occasionally, it will rise up and something is resolved, not when you have eradicated it, but when you have learned how to take care of it so that it exists without being the everything ruiner. Like, it will
Yes.
take over your entire life. If you are
Yes.
crying for an hour, that does not mean you will be sad for days. If letting your emotions out, and like, remember, like, there are standards for appropriate behavior in different workplaces and different social settings that lead to this repression. And we do need to be able to function within society. We can't walk around as the heart on our sleeves all the time. That's why we need to make the space for ourselves
True.
to feel without the fear of judgment of society or self. And listen, this is just kind of the deal. You're always going to be sitting in judgment of yourself a little bit to hold yourself to a standard. But if you find yourself engaging in shaming techniques in order to judge, which what happens when you judge? You look at a situation and you figure it out from a fair and a removed standpoint. It does not mean condemnation. It does
Thank you
not
for saying
mean
that.
shaming or condemning yourself. When you
Judgment is good.
judgment is sound judgment. Sound judgment is not the same thing as being judgmental of another. Exactly. Shame on you for doing this, or like that's always about something that's going on with the person, that they're very like they're insecure in their life, and so they have to project a lot of stuff onto other people.
Judgment can protect you.
Judgment, sound judgment can also lead you towards like sometimes you have to be your own mentor, your own coach, your own like, hey, listen, buddy, within, hey, listen, Alane, or hey, listen, Rachel, listen, you're reaching for a part of yourself that is understandably there and you didn't do it to yourself. And you can't lock it in a closet in order to resolve it. Instead, you have to bring it out into the light, examine it, and say, well, that one's pretty healed. That one, oh, that one's getting a little bit infected again. Let's get it cleaned out. The only way
Right.
to do these things is with an acceptance of
Mm,
the negative. Rather, we try to shun, and what we need to do is accept, because there's a difference between wallowing in it and losing control of everything and having it take over your life, and acknowledging something, accepting it, not shaming it out of existence, talking to yourself about why it's there. Talk to yourself about why it's there. When we talk about like the judgment that goes into sound judgment of self, if you are the type of person who would look at another person and extend them compassion for their circumstances, I beg of you to hear me. Do the same thing for yourself. It doesn't
absolutely.
mean letting yourself off the hook and being like, well, you just can't help it. You're an injured person, limp, limp, limp. It means that you can say, this is where the injury came from. And we're in a form of therapy where we're trying to rehabilitate that part of ourselves into a functional state that serves us, that helps us, but it's not our enemy. That same sensitivity thing that comes along with being an introvert or being a psychic or being a healer or just being a human being sometimes allows us to feel joy, allows us to feel love, allows us to feel all the good things. And the more you deal with that icky, like, oh, that's my personal
Mm,
swamp, I got to go get myself out of an alligator right now. The more you deal with that, the less weight it has in your life. And it's just your counterbalancing emotion.
yeah.
It doesn't tip
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And you talked about depression as well. And there are so many methods for coping with depression that, like, first of all, never be ashamed of taking medication.
100%.
Thank you, because brain chemistry is real. And if it really is out of
100%.
whack, you might
I,
need medicine.
yes. And as a registered nurse, I feel there is such a disservice for people in the spiritual community who are like, I'm going to coach you so you can come off your meds. That is dangerous. That is a violation of ethics.
It's
Like
irresponsible.
it's irresponsible. And I am somebody who has been on and off medications throughout my life. When I know that I'm getting in a space where I am not chemically balanced, I have no problem going to my primary care physician and saying, guess what? It's time. And I'm okay with that. And I'm fine with that. And I know when it's time to come off of it. Like it happens with the seasons. It's a seasonal affective disorder, kind of with the gloom and doom and whatever. and that's fine. And I'm okay with that. And I'm not going to judge myself for that. Have I been judged as a person, of, oh, I don't care. I feel better
Please
and
don't care. Please
I'm
don't care.
important. I don't care.
If you would take cold medicine for a wretched cold, then
Or
please just
Tylenol for a headache.
exactly, or any other over-the-counter medication or prescription medication to deal with an illness, please
Yeah.
stop making such a marked and delineated difference between mental illness and physical illness, because guess what?
Right.
Mental illness is physical illness. Your brain has a form of chemistry that can get out of
Right.
whack. Now, I'm not on meds, and I choose to, like, I have like all the disorders I have at the lowest levels, so I'm able to manage them through productive self-talk, through productive
Yes.
habits, through exercise, through
Yes.
diet, through doing the things that I know will not exacerbate my tendency towards anxiety and depression. I am in charge of that part of myself. I take
Yeah.
responsibility for my own well-being. But if you are in a space where you need more help with that, and the behavioral techniques that help us manage these things are not helping, please, I know that the pharmaceutical industry is insanely corrupt. I know that part, but I'm not talking about buying stock in a pharmaceutical company. I'm saying,
Right.
like, listen, even though they make money off of people, it can help you. It does not have to be a life sentence. And
It's,
it is something that will get you out of a terrible place that you don't
yeah,
deserve to be in. You
it's
don't
part of
deserve
the
to be ruled
toolbox.
by your sadness or your
Yeah.
darkness or your fear.
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep cutting you off. Please go, lady.
Oh, no, no, no. It's part of your toolbox. And like you said, I also have my healthy habits and things that I know that I can utilize that. And I'm grateful for, you and I are similar in the fact that we've done a lot of healing. We have a lot of good things in our toolbox that we don't have to sit there and ruminate in this, cycle of depression or anxiety. And we have tools that we can pull ourselves out of it pretty quickly. And that comes with time and practice and being gentle with ourselves, at moments. And maybe it's journaling, maybe it's going for a walk, maybe it's, I don't like to go into victim mindset. I guess it's the one thing I really try very hard not to be like, oh, woe is me. It's like I will take myself out of this situation. What's going on? Why do I feel like this? And then I'll look down with my lens, what's going on? And then I'll be like, Rachel, and then I'll do what I need to do and keep it moving. And medication has helped me tremendously. Right now I'm not on meds, but I have been in the past. But I also know what I need to get back on now. So it's like it for me, it's like eating a salad. Okay, Rachel, you need your salad today. You're good. Like it's okay. And I'll use
Um,
crystals too.
yeah, like there's a whole bunch of things that I use, like sound cleansings, and like, I've
Oh,
got
oh, I've really gotten into that's really helped me is shifting my environment. I've really leaned into feng shui and I've leaned into kind of setting the energy of my environment because I need to feel comfortable, energetically okay in my environment. So before we got on this call, I actually rearranged my office. I reset some intentions in my office. I moved around some things to like make the energy a little bit more flowing. So that's what I really have been leaning into is really like, okay, where's this corner of my room? Where's this activated in my room? Is there clutter? Is there dust? My environment is part of how I manifest things and it's how I feel. And I want to feel warm and fuzzy and okay. I also want to feel okay if I want to have a moment to cry and scream and yell safe in my home. And that's why I really have leaned into feng shui. That's what I have done.
That's all about energetic flow and
Yes,
learning
like
how. Remember, like if we're talking about flow, you don't want to think about a stream entirely, which because all like, rivers and things are leading to larger
yeah,
bodies of water. Remember, things come and go. There are ebbs and there are flows that you
yes,
are meant to have emotional fluctuation. And
right.
one thing I'm going to call attention to that, like, it's not calling you out on any level. Be careful of the whole shaming yourself. Like, I'm not talking to you, I'm just generalized you,
Yeah,
with the victim tag. Don't be a victim, don't be a victim, don't be a victim.
true.
Because
You're right.
again, it can be a double-edged sword. Anything can be good. Like that can be a reminder to be like, hey, listen,
You're
there's
taking
still a lot.
advantage of me.
Exactly. It can be something that is important for you to understand that we sometimes have been victimized in our lives by something and it leaves a lasting mark. And you can examine
Yes.
that and say, it's reminding me of that time, but I'm out of that time and I know how to protect myself and I know how to direct my moods in a way that I don't get stuck in the sadness swirl, because energy does work in a cycle unless you do something to break it and to break that pattern, to break that cycle. But it's not, again, you're not looking to get rid of the parts of yourself that you're like, I have avoided that part because I don't like it as much. You
Mm-hmm.
haven't liked it as much because you haven't learned how to work with it. There is
True.
no part of you that is something that you should be like, I hate that part. I hate that part. Learn to work with it. Learn to work with it. Like the whole, like I've described the, like, I have a big boom bam temper. I haven't in a long time. I haven't in a long time because I learned how to work with it, to recognize what are the things that might make me angry. Is it because I won't express my real feelings? I don't feel,
Mm,
it's usually it's that. It's when I won't let somebody know that it's like, this is ticking me off, this is ticking me off, this is ticking me off. It was a boundary issue.
right.
It was a boundary issue. And the way that I resolved it was to lean in on, I accept every single part of me, but there are parts of me I'm trying to improve and to rehabilitate. Again, like that beat up shelter dog, that it's like, it's going to take you some time to come out of that crate sometimes, and you're going to be shaking, but you're going to be able to do it. Approach
True.
yourself like you're trying to take care of that part of your damaged self with patience and love and kindness. But we can't practice like there's so many trends in spirituality that are very reductive. They take a process that is meant to coexist with a bunch of other things like energetic flow, setting your space, finding your different tools in your toolkit, and it gets turned into this one very simplified thing. And I've seen it on TikTok, which is, TikTok is an interesting place and an amazing tool for some people, but it has its perils, of course, and not just
Mm,
in security leaks. It has, which I don't even know about that. I am not a computer programmer, but what I have seen is the perpetuation of stereotypical approaches that are they're band-aids when a real healing is needed. And it is, I
right.
never say anything negative to myself. I'm perfect just as I am type of thing. It's like you are worthy just as you are, and you have the things that you are working with. And that is okay. You do not have to believe yourself to be 100% in the right, 100% perfect, 100% anything other than worthy of your own love and compassion. And when you start approaching yourself as being worthy of your own love and compassion, you will heal that part of yourself and you will attract people who will respond to like your ability to defend yourself appropriately instead of with a bazooka, with a soft, kind of door closing instead of the door slamming type of thing. When you're in
Right.
a healthy space, you learn how to protect yourself enough that procrastination will still rise up because you may have like deep wounds, core wounds, learning the method on how to deal with it and accepting that part of growth is living with discomfort. And so
Right.
going towards the thing that will make you uncomfortable, knowing that it might cause this, it might cause that. You know what I've found with that over and over again? When I go in with it, with my laundry list of it's going to do this, it's going to do that, it's going to do that, it was at a much lesser degree than it would have been if I had been desperately trying to not acknowledge it as the thing that was going to
Absolutely.
make me feel awful.
So true.
Acknowledging my feelings beforehand lessens the severity of them, talking them through. If you don't have somebody to talk to, you talked about journaling. Not everybody likes to do that. Almost everybody has some form of voice memo on your phone. If you are not good with coping with your emotions, get good with talking about what you're feeling in your voice memo.
Right.
Headphones, go for a walk and listen to it because you need to get in touch with the emotional expression within you. And it's the easiest way to hear yourself. The
Mm,
easiest way to start with coping with this emotional regulation issue is to start acknowledging your feelings. And not everybody can go to therapy every week. Not everybody can, if you're doing it by yourself, basically you can do it every single day of your life. You can do it multiple times a day until it becomes an internal process. You start with externalizing your internal process to get an understanding of what is going on with you. And if anybody else judges them as weird, guess what? F-bomb alert. Fuck them.
yes.
You're doing your
I
work.
agree.
You're learning
Right.
how to live your healthy life. And if somebody else wants to judge that as weird, well, you won't be going out to dinner anytime soon and no loss because they're not really anybody that you should concern yourself with. There are
Right.
provisos. Maybe don't do it in crowded rooms. Like, honest to goodness, we all have some alone time. We can all seek it out
Yeah.
sometimes. But if you're walking down the street, holding out your phone and speaking your feelings aloud, I submit to you, there is not one human being that is going to know that you are not talking to somebody on your cell phone.
True. And people don't care as much as you think they do. They're not
They-
paying attention as much as you think they
exactly.
are.
If you spend a lot of time judging yourself, you will walk through the world thinking that the rest of the world is judging you as well. The reality is that most people are living in that energy as well, and that when you are out of their sight, you're let go from their reality because you're not a focus of it.
Right.
You're seeing things from your own POV, and that's not to be like, it's is it a little bit of a lesson in humility? Again, all these things can get taken to a toxic place where it's like, I'm so humble that like I deserve nothing. Like you can really turn it into, again, the double-edged sword. But it
Yeah.
is about accepting that it's like everybody else is out there living their own experience of self, trying to overcome whatever is holding them back. They're in their own space, they're doing their own thing. And on the rare occasion that they are focusing on somebody else, it doesn't mean that you're doing something freakish or wrong. It just means they may not understand what you're doing when you are trying to get in touch with or create. Because that's what it's about. It's about creating an emotional dialogue within yourself that will keep you in touch with your feelings so that you don't run away from them, so that you don't procrastinate, so that you don't practice avoidance because you haven't developed the coping tool yet. These are
So
ways to develop the coping tools. Rachel, do you have any thoughts on this that you want to share?
I think you have laid down some very valuable tips and really tangible things for people to do that may not necessarily are aware that they're repressing some emotional responses. I always say for if I'm going into a situation that I may perceive as being difficult, I will say to myself, Rachel, you're only uncomfortable with this because you're not used to doing it. And then it will push me out of that response, and then I will go and do what I need to do. So that's something that I've leaned on for a lot of years to really difficult conversations or things that I'm not wanting to do. I will say you're only uncomfortable with it because you're not used to doing it. And then I'll go and have space for myself, and then I'll come out of it and I'll be like, that was good. That was
The,
okay.
the whole desensitization theory and application of desensitizing yourself to the negative emotional feedback by exposing yourself to stressful situations in controlled situations. Meaning that, like, what if you really, really just hate crowds? And it's not at the agoraphobic level, but it's like the thing that keeps you from joining classes or getting out there or meeting new people because you're like, I get nervous around other people.
Yeah.
What you do is you start planning, I can go there for 15 minutes. I'm going to go to that art fair. And yeah, it looks like it's slammed and I may be uncomfortable. And if after 15 minutes I'm really not enjoying myself, I have my own car, I have my exit strategy, I know what I will do, and I will give myself
Yeah.
permission to leave. And when I leave, I will congratulate myself for doing something that name 3 things that you're proud of and 3 things that you're grateful for to help you get into the positive space of encouraging yourself rather than berating yourself. And
True.
never use gratitude as a bludgeoning tool to shame yourself out of an emotion. Gratitude is authentic. The whole count your blessings things did get turned into a stop complaining thing. It was never meant to be that. If you count your blessings, you will be changing how you look at your life and you'll be focusing more on the positive. And that's how we manifest our reality is
True.
we see what we're choosing to focus on. But
True.
there's a transition between one state of being, it's a neutral place where you are dealing with your things to get to the more positive place.
Mm.
And do not rush through the neutral place and do not ignore the darker place to try and
True.
always inhabit that brighter space. So thank you so much for joining me because like I knew you were the right person to talk to about this.
Thank
And
you.
I really hope that I think I'm probably just going to go ahead and put this right up this week because I think it contains some tools and some understanding of like, why do we procrastinate? Why do we act like we're not on our own team? Why are we sometimes our own worst enemies? Because one of the things to remember is spiritual growth, spiritual expansion, and your best state of being exist outside of your comfort zone. So going towards things in a controlled, a desensitizing manner is one of the things that will help you have a broader experience. And when you have a broader experience, you're less likely to get stuck in that ego place, in that insular view of your own little world. You'll be taking in more, and it will be expanding your viewpoint, and it will be expanding your energy, and it will be expanding your connection to the idea that there is an undercurrent of energy that connects like-minded people in collectives, and that you are not as alone as you sometimes feel when you are having those dark feelings. So
Very, very true.
I'm Lane. You can find me at therisingmoon.com to book me for a tarot card reading or a life coaching session or anything else that you might have in mind. Seriously, I talk to people about this stuff. I help them understand their inner world as well. You can find me at Logical Magic Examining Esoterica, Cronecast at The Rising Moon on YouTube. And then you can also find me on my Patreon, which is linked in the description boxes down below of my YouTube and of everything else. So you can find that as well as daily spiritual advice with emotional regulation tips Monday through Friday and some other things, some energy healings. Now we're going to go to Rachel because Rachel is awesome. Rachel has she has a really good healing method. She has a really good healing energy. She's one of the people that I can recommend without reservation. Not that I ever recommend people with reservation, but you know what I mean. She's pretty freaking cool. Where can people find you, Rachel?
You can find me on YouTube at Rachel C. Garrett. You can find me at AkashicAngels.com, and you can check out my podcast, which Alane was wonderful, one of the wonderful, amazing guests on it, at Spiritual Spotlight Series. So thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Alane. You're so nice.
Thank you, Rachel, as are you. And thank everybody for tuning in. We will see you again. Don't fear your negative emotions. Learn how to work with them, and you'll get the benefit of not spending so much of your energy trying to ignore the stuff you don't know how to cope with yet. You learn how to cope with it, and then you get happier. Things seem brighter. Things pass more quickly. There is so much worth in learning how to do this work for the quality of your life, for the undercurrent of happiness that can return to you far more easily when you deal with the stuff that is keeping you from being in flow. Take care, be well, and live magically.